Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I hope everyone is doing okay. It's 3:40 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. And instead of staring at the television, I decided to do the news. There are a few stories that I would like to do tonight that I'm probably not going to get to tonight, but I will get to probably in the morning. But this one is a must. This is an absolute must. And let me check my sound first. Always check your sound. Bad things happen when you don't. If you guys enjoy what I put down, please feel free to share, like. You can always support through Patreon or PayPal. So Kshama Sawant, a month ago, gets marshals forces in Seattle, Washington to deal with a homeless population. If I remember correctly, the homeless population in Seattle surged to like third in the nation. They're up to over 12,000 homelessness in that particular area. So the city council, with a bit of support, passed a tax. Now they wanted the tax to be more, but the tax ended up being, I think it was $250 or $275 on the head of each person or in companies earning more than $20 million a year. The money, the overwhelming majority of the money, was going to go towards either homelessness or homeless services. Amazon, it was called the Amazon tax. Amazon, Starbucks, some of the grocery stores in the area put money to attack the city itself, to bribe people, I would call them turncoats, to stand outside to get signatures in order to come up with a referendum. The cowards, the yellow-bellied, chicken-livered, soft-ass, tender-hearted cowards, the spineless cowards on the city council in Seattle, repealed it before it even got to the point of a referendum. This is utterly contemptible. These spineless Democrats, these weak, spineless, utterly contemptible Democrats, folded. They put down their guns and ran in the other direction. Kshama Sawant called it a complete betrayal of the working class. And Kshama Sawant will be absolutely and completely right. This is utterly horrible. And by the way, I understand that there will be some conservatives that think this is perfectly okay. You should be bothered by this, even if you're not necessarily on board with thinking that the tax was a good idea. You must understand what took place here. Look, I understand that some conservatives take the argument of their masters, meaning they take the argument of the plutocrat in order to explain why the plutocrat is in the position that the plutocrat is in and why that is perfectly good. They choose their plantation and don't necessarily accept the fact that it's a plantation nonetheless. When these guys are talking about freedom, they're not talking about freedom for you, whether it's the Democratic Party or Republican Party. They are talking about freedom for people with means to do as they will. At the end of the day, the amount people pay in taxes depends upon the society itself. It rises and falls. There's a certain amount of money that it takes to propagate a society. Whether that's dealing with healthcare, whether that's dealing with education, whether that's dealing with the firefighters, the police departments, keeping the lights on. All of these things that make a city a city. Those things are dependent upon tax, especially when you get into state and local governments. The amount and percentage that you pay in tax, you pay more of your income in tax than plutocrats do, by percentage. I mean, for all intents and purposes, all of us put in a certain amount into the pot. It just so happens that they were able to magnificently benefit off of that pot. And good for you. You hit the jackpot, you became a millionaire, billionaire, whatever. Pay your fair share. And that fair share, yes, is dependent upon the needs of the society itself. If you want to deal with the fire department, if you want to have lights, if you want to have all of these things that we consider to be a stable society, you pay your fair share. And if you have more, you may pay more. That's called a society. The catch here is many of the plutocrats pay like 15% of their income into taxes, as opposed to you, where you pay like 30%. Many of these companies don't pay squat. If I am not mistaken, Amazon didn't pay squat in taxes. In some cases, the United States government paid them in taxes. You have cities that are literally giving your tax dollars away to get a company to come to the city. Certainly, this is not the way. That's in the best interest of working people. The local governments, whatever you want to think, whether you think it's a good idea of the tax or not, concentrated power. You may dislike some elements of government, and I would agree with you that I hate corruption. Fucking hate it. Absolutely hate it. But government is the edifice to which you have some pull and some control over. You have no control over private interests, and that private interest, for the most part, is unaccountable power. This idea of dismantling or breaking or hurting or injuring government is literally the things that these politicians push, especially the Republican Party, in order to allow them to be more free and to be more unaccountable. That freedom being to run roughshod over you and your interests. A local government realized that there was a problem. That local government was not getting help from the state government in order to deal with that particular problem. That local government made a choice, a democratic choice, to raise the taxes in that area on businesses making more than $20 million. Businesses that could very damn well afford it. And private interests, the plutocrats, the greedy rich fucks that are greasy and nasty, they have cash oozing out of their pores. They're perfectly okay with using your land, using your cement, using your concrete, using your resources, using your electricity, using your employees, using all of these things that make a societal fabric, including the customers that come in and out of their businesses. They're perfectly okay with using all of those things. They just don't want to pay for them. They just don't want to pay for them. They instead will prefer to use that money to attack the city, as opposed to use that money to put those resources into the city itself, or dealing with issues associated with the city that it is magnificently using. There is a shameful degree of cowardice in the city knuckling under to this type of extortion. And my point to this is of saying, even if you're a conservative, you should feel something about this. Your government, the sovereignty of your government, has just literally been usurped by private interests. A democratic decision was literally undermined and gotten rid of purely based on a bunch of plutocrats did not liking that particular choice. Fuck what the city needs. We need our dollars. We need our dollars. There is a certain false consciousness that sometimes exists in Trump, in conservatives, I'm going to say it that way. Barely have two dimes rubbed together to their name, but at the same token singing the praises of the capitalistic system and how awesome the plutocrats are in this case, with the wild part that they don't care about you. You're propping up a system and supporting people who don't care about you. These guys literally undermine a policy that was going to go towards helping the homeless in that particular state. They don't care about you. They care purely about their money and the amount of money they can make. In fact is, you should not care about them. This tax bill should have stood. And these spineless, cowardly Democrats, the shameful level of cowardice, should not be forgotten. This is just name names. Council members who voted for the repeal include Sally Bagshaw, Lauren Gonzalez, Bruce Harnell, Lisa Hermold, Rob Johnson, Mike O'Brien. Mayor Jenny Durkin, who signed the tax on May 16th, is expected to put her signature on the repeal. This is embarrassing. You literally signed something a month ago and is now repealing what you signed because businesses told you to knuckle under. This is kind of what I'm getting at. Your edifice, the thing that you fight so hard for, this idea of the state and the nation state, has just been knuckled under by private, unaccountable power. Tell me this is not problematic. I understand the pressures that are associated with this. I get it. But understand the pretense or the what's the word I'm looking for? Understand what this sets, the precedents this sets. This is dramatically problematic. The idea of private interests usurping the role of state and essentially telling state to bow down. I would really wish that workers had this understanding and this idea that there is a solidarity among us all. Regardless of your identities and the way that they slice people up, all of us should be united in this. Corruption is a problem. Both of these parties are co-opted. Both of these parties have passed policies that allowed certain people to get magnificently wealthy at the expense of others. Did you know that 95% of the wealth under Obama went to the top 1%? Do you know that Donald Trump is going to trump that magnificent fucking number in and of itself? Do you know that those jobs that people are screaming and hollering about, 95% of those were part-time or contract? They are singing the praises of a phantom recovery, missing the pain that is within the country itself. My point to you is both of these parties, certainly you can see that they are not working in your interests. Please tell me you can see that the people that Trump was putting in those offices were just as corporate and just as much hacks, if not more so, than the people that Obama was putting into those offices that was put in by Citigroup. I'm making the point to you that both are co-opted, both are problematic. When you have a plutocrat that's on the television screen saying, I told Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to shut up about class. And you have the Republican on the other side saying, they said if I don't pass this tax bill that's giving them billions of dollars, I think it was over $1 trillion tax cut, then lose my number. They are literally talking about bribery. Please tell me you understand that there is something problematic with a local government, even if it's making a policy that you don't particularly like. This uneasy situation between democracy and capitalism. And the whole way where capitalism at this point has literally subsumed the thing that's supposed to be keeping capitalism in check. Your city had needs, and your city was trying to attend to those needs. And these companies said, fuck those needs. We need our dollars. I understand that there are 12,000 people living on the street, but what about me? I need my third house. I have a second wife that I need to pay for. Here is the Washington Post. They seem to be friendly to the story. It's immensely disappointing, said Seattle City Council member Mike O'Brien. Is it now? Who voted for the tax before voting for its repeal. It's immensely disappointing. I bet it is immensely disappointing, Mike. But it has become more and more clear that the people of Seattle seem to agree with Amazon and at least part of the narrative that the Chamber of Commerce has been putting out. It's because they pushed a narrative. It's because they paid people to stand out there and spout bullshit. The question becomes whether you knuckle under or whether you actually push for your thing. Look, I am not making the point that you won't necessarily lose. You may lose that argument, but you make the goddamn argument. You make the argument. You put your weapons down and hauled ass a month after. Do you know how ridiculous this looks? Do you know how utterly ridiculous this looks? Not to mention they sprung it on Sawant at the last minute. The abrupt reversal enraged some supporters of the head tax, who argued the wealthy corporations in the city can afford to pay more to address homelessness. They could. They're using resources and everything else. Yeah, they can pay their fair share. The measure passed unanimously by the city council last month, levied $275 employee per month. Think about that. All of them agreed on it. Democratically, they agreed this is a way for us to deal with this issue. I agree it is somewhat of an imperfect solution. But understand, at the end point of the problem, oftentimes you don't necessarily have perfect solutions. They found an issue or a way that they can deal with this issue. The rich can pay more. If you ask people, should the rich pay more in taxes, usually they will say yes. Now, if they're being fear-mongering, talking about they're going to lose jobs and everything else, you need to make that argument as to why they can pay more. I'm not saying the argument is going to be easy. I'm not even saying you can win it. You may lose this on a referendum, but it is terrifying to anybody that cares anything about the nation state and this idea of the democratic process, that the thing that is supposed to hold power in check, that is supposed to see to the status and the stability of the society and of the community, that includes not having people sleeping on the streets, failed miserably and wouldn't even fight for the thing that it voted for a month prior. Utterly cowardly. Seattle City Council voted 7-2 to repeal the tax. The vote capped more contentious debate in City Hall, which several speakers accused the government official of bending to the whims of Amazon. It's not accused. That's literally what they did. Why are you using the term accused in this kind of passive way? They literally had one position. Amazon pulled their chain. They dropped to their knees and opened their mouths as wide as possible. That's what took place. Call it what it is. Accused. It's not accused. Tax experts say the reversal underscores the limited leverage the cities across the country have over corporations such as Amazon, which help wage an intense public relations campaign to turn the public against it. Jeff Bezos has $130 billion. Put that shit in context. They're bitching. Can Jeff Bezos just make maybe $3 billion this week? Can he get wide with $3 billion? Listen to this. Republicans in the legislature were also preparing to strike the legislation down. Now, Republicans don't even have the legislature. How can they be talking about striking the legislation down if they don't have the legislature? Guess. Spineless Democrats in the state legislature. You could find them everywhere. Moderates. They call them moderates. Spineless Democrats who call themselves Democrats, for the most part in name only. 2/3 of the revenue from the tax would have been directed towards housing in the city. Most of the rest would have helped the homeless services, including emergency shelters. You tell me, is it better to have 12,000 people roaming the streets without somewhere to stay, or is it better for the city to provide modest accommodations to keep those people from out on the street? Do you think it would increase or decrease crime to have people not on the streets? Or do you think crime would increase if people were living on the streets? I'm making the point to you that there are certain consequences for not dealing with the funding necessary to support your community and your society. Seattle business community launched a campaign to repeal the tax by putting it to the voters through the ballot referendum. Starbucks and Amazon each kicked in $25,000 for the effort. The supermarket groups put in $80,000, according to the Seattle Times. This is an issue of class. The capitalist class hated the fact that they had to pay for the society to which they profit off. And in which case, it was cheaper for them to just put that money into attacking the city itself. That's amazing. They're not into you. They're working for their own benefit. They're trying to make as much profit as they can. Capitalism does not sit well with democracy. As in this case, oligarchs said, we don't like this because we don't like to pay for the society to which we exist. We're trying to maximize our profit, and if you're talking about us having to actually pay for the things to which we profit off of, we can't make as much profit. Jeff Bezos can't make his $9 billion this week if you're paying people a decent wage. And right here, I'm going to end it on Kshama Sawant. I have a news flash for city council members who capitulated to this in lightning speed. This was never going to be easy in the face of mass corporate misinformation, Kshama Sawant, a council member and a member of the Socialist Alternative. A socialist political party said in an interview, it is a complete betrayal of the working people. And just so we get their names again. Sally Bagshaw, Lorena Gonzalez, Bruce Harlow, Lisa Herbold, Rob Johnson, and Mike O'Brien. And Mayor Jenny Durkin also ended up being essentially a coward. Alright, I'll end it on that. I'm not going to keep this one too long. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. And by the way, if there look, either the nation state is dominant or not. And the idea that anybody would be supporting private, corporate, consolidated power, literally having more power than the nation state itself, that should be a terrifying enterprise. We, as a people ourselves, whether you're to the left, to the right, not the fucks in Washington in the political class. I'm talking about just a regular person who cares about us having somewhat of a consolidation of power over the political apparatus. A federal jobs guarantee would put an end to this. You wouldn't have the situation where you have to tax these guys in this kind of odd way. People will have the money themselves, essentially, A, support themselves, but B, when conservatives say get a job, hey, they'll have a job. At the end of the day, you're talking about getting rid of homeless, getting rid of poverty, and you're talking about doing it in a way that allows people to actually have some level of work. A win-win. Republicans are not going to support this because this adversely affects the plutocrats themselves and it undermines their power base. You, however, be it a Trump supporter, be it somebody who's in the 99%, be it a wayward Democrat, should fuck them. Eat the rich. They are looking out for their best interests and they've waged a class war on you for the past 50, 60 years. I can make the case longer than that. Do what's in your best interest. A federal jobs guarantee ups the level of living to everybody in the society almost overnight, not to mention undermining poverty right off the bat. Look out for our interests. That's all I'm saying. I don't care if you hate gays. I don't care if you hate blacks. I don't care if you hate my guts. At the very least, don't fuck me in the ballot. And I won't fuck you in the ballot. And can, at the very least, have this understanding that these identities can be piecemeal together under the banner of a 99%. I understand that it's not going to be something where we agree on each and every issue, but at the very least, this conversation, when it gets into identity, gets divisive. And I suspect that's kind of part of the problem with the political class in and of itself. A politician that can deal with this thing of, I am representing the 99%, has a much better chance of putting together a coalition than these guys fighting for these kind of identity battles. But nevertheless, I make this point. I don't necessarily care of your political affiliations. At the very least, can we come together to agree on actual decent policy? Federal jobs guarantee is one of those decent policies. If your goal is to stop having people, Republicans are always saying, get a job, get a job. Hey, Support a policy that allows people to get that job and to be able to live on that decent job. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to bitch and moan about that. This was an utter betrayal of the working class. Kshama Sawant is absolutely right. Thanks, guys.